Two of the most proactive countries in the fight against loot boxes right now are Netherlands and Belgium. Netherlands ruled earlier this year that based on their research, 4 of 10 games that they looked into violated gambling regulations in the country, specifically targeting games where players are allowed to cash out in-game items for real money. Belgium took it a step further by ruling that any kind of loot boxes violated the country's gambling regulations, and by calling them a danger to society, stipulating that any system that allows players to pay for the chance of earning in-game items, regardless of whether they're gameplay boosts or cosmetics, must be removed from games if publishers don't wish to face potential fines, sales bans, or criminal prosecution. Specific games Belgium called out include Star Wars Battlefront 2, FIFA 18, Counter-Strike, and Overwatch. Now, Battlefront 2 had already disabled microtransactions by the time Belgium began their investigation, but the other titles were heavily scrutinized by the Belgian Gaming Commission. The results of all this, well, we have already seen companies like Valve remove the ability to purchase loot boxes altogether for games like CSGO in Belgium. Though for Dota 2, Valve did shadily circumvent regulations by changing loot boxes so that players can peek at what their next loot box will yield before opening it, though you can't open the loot box after that until you purchase the current one. The new system did mitigate some things, though. Players can no longer purchase loot boxes in bulk, and slot machine-like loot box opening animations were removed altogether. But that doesn't change the fact that the current Dota 2 system is still gambling, as there is still avenue for players to pay for the random chance of obtaining a desired item, though the changes seem to have been enough to evade regulations from both Netherlands and Belgium. Progress is progress, though, and the fact that greedy game publishers are being forced to rethink their shady business models is a good sign, and as more countries join in on regulating what's become a rampant, exploitative money-milking machine, as risks of implementing loot boxes increase, the less companies will be inclined to include them in future projects. Now, another game that recently had to back off to abide by Belgium's gambling laws is Activision Blizzard. The following information comes from Blizzard Europe's official forums, where one of the community managers published a rather interesting update on August 27th, 2018. As I said before, Overwatch is one of the games Belgium was keen on investigating, and what the country found was very simple. It's gambling masqueraded as a gameplay feature. Here's how Blizzard community manager Veneras detailed the deliberation in this post. In April 2018, the Belgian Gaming Commission published a report that was endorsed by the Belgian Ministry of Justice, in which they concluded that paid loot boxes in Overwatch are considered gambling under local law. While we at Blizzard were surprised by this conclusion and do not share the same opinion, we have decided to comply with their interpretation of Belgian law. As a result, we have no choice but to implement measures that will prevent Overwatch and Heroes of the Storm players located in Belgium from purchasing in-game loot boxes and loot chests with real money and gems. No matter what, we want to make sure that our players around the world have the best entertainment experience possible. While players in Belgium will no longer be able to purchase paid loot boxes in Overwatch and loot chests in Heroes of the Storm, they will still be able to earn them by playing the games, and they'll still have access to all in-game content. These measures will be implemented shortly. We also remain open to further discussions with the Belgian Gaming Commission and Ministry of Justice on this topic. You've gotta love how they want to frame this as if compliance was a decision rather than submission. Also, wow, really, Blizzard? You're actually going to stand there and say you're surprised by this conclusion? Then again, this is the same company that stated in the past that they don't belong in the loot box discussion that erupted from the Battlefront 2 controversy. This was from an interview that Blizzard president and co-founder Mike Morhaime did with Game Informer from all the way back in November 2017. When asked about their philosophy regarding loot boxes, here's how Mike responded. "You're talking about gambling? I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with crates that give you randomized items. I think that whatever the controversy is, I don't think Overwatch belongs in that controversy." Then, when asked where Blizzard draws the line as far as loot box mechanics go, when asked if it has anything to do with items earned being cosmetics only versus gameplay boosts, Mike responded as follows. "Well, it's definitely something we have avoided. I think another element in terms of the gambling question, the question in terms of that is whether or not you're actually There's an element of converting back into real-world value. I think that's a critical element, and that element does not exist in Overwatch loot crates. Finally, when Game Informer clarified they weren't targeting Overwatch loot boxes specifically, Mike said, "Yeah, but I think that's an element. If you're going to talk about those things, then you have to look at it as, well, are people trying to make money doing this?" Unbelievable, this guy. Of course people are trying to make money doing this. The ones making the money in this case are, of course, Activision, Blizzard, and the higher-ups and executives who are pocketing tens of millions of dollars worth of salary annually. Does Mike think that the business model of casinos is to allow players to make money? Hell no. Casinos hand out chump change compared to what they rake in from those throwing their money away at games where the odds are stacked against them. The real business model of casinos is to take money at everyone else's expense, which is not at all different from how loot boxes function. Sure, in certain games like Overwatch and Heroes of the Storm, you can't cash out gambled items, so there's certainly a distinction there, but the basic principle is the same. Players are paying for the chance of obtaining something of value in an environment where the odds are rigged, and the only ones who ultimately get to profit from this system are the heads of the company. But at least with casinos, you know what they are and what you're getting into. You know you're going in casinos expecting to lose money just by nature, and there are regulations and systems in place like age restrictions to mitigate their potential damage. With loot boxes, on the other hand, it's a lawless free-for-all through which publishers get to lie to consumers by disguising them as features or by touting bullshit like player choice. Now, obviously, whether players can profit off of gambling-like mechanisms in games or not has different legal implications in different countries. It's much easier to say that CSGO and its skin trading can legally constitute gambling than it is to say that Overwatch and its cosmetic loot boxes meet the legal definition of gambling. That's why in Netherlands, Overwatch gets a pass, but not so in Belgium. But that's why laws and regulations need to be updated to catch up to the rapid evolution of microtransactions. Game companies and organizations have made it loud and clear that they have no intention of taking responsibility, so somebody has to do it for them. And if you ask me, Belgium has the right idea here. By forcing Blizzard to remove Overwatch players' ability to directly purchase loot boxes, they have taken the gambling aspect of it out of the equation. Loot boxes are still there, but they are now an incentive for progression and for playing the game rather than a potentially financially ruinous addiction hazard. Unfortunately, this change to Overwatch and Heroes of the Storm only applies to Belgium, which I'm assuming is small enough of a market that Activision Blizzard had no problems cutting their losses there. To really have a wide-reaching effect, more countries need to crack down on loot boxes, and currently the best chance we have is for the European Union to regulate them across the continent, which is something that's apparently being discussed behind the scenes according to Dutch officials. The European Union is a big enough market that loot box restrictions would force the entirety of the gaming industry to think twice before implementing paid randomized rewards. The European Union has already forced companies' hands worldwide when they passed the General Data Protection Regulation, and should they pursue loot boxes seriously, they could certainly do the same for the gaming industry as a whole. Whether that will actually happen though and how long it might take, well, that's up in the air. But slowly but surely, we are seeing a stubborn gaming industry being pushed back by outspoken gamers and fed-up legislators, and I for one couldn't be happier, especially as we're seeing major releases like Shadow of War, Forza Motorsport 7, Battlefield 5, and Anthem pull loot boxes from these games in fear of ramifications. The hope is that this will all ultimately pave the way for a future where games can just be games that are valued by artistic merits rather than by how cunningly they are able to manipulate players into opening their wallets. At least, these are just one man's thoughts and opinions. I'd love to hear what your take is on Overwatch and Heroes of the Storm loot boxes being forcibly removed in Belgium in the comments below. With that, I would like to end this news update. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoy my content and would like to support this channel directly, consider donating on Patreon. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Yong Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Yong out.